welcome to our space, everybody. So my name is Nath, and I'm a second-year PhD researcher at the School of Sociology and Social Policy at the University of Nottingham. Today's space is sponsored by Taylor & Francis, and we're going to enter the world of procrastination and imposter syndrome, issues which have an enormous impact within the academic community. I'm joined once again with the wonderful Zoe from TNF Online. So before we get started, I wonder if you could just introduce yourself and TNF.
Hi there, everyone. I apologise if I sound a bit funny today as compared to the last few weeks. I had a bit of dental work recently and I've still got a bit of swelling. As Nath kindly introduced me, I'm Zoe. I work with Taylor and Francis in the kind of social media side of things. I've had a academic background kind of through anatomical and biomedical sciences at university. I joined Taylor and Francis back in 2022 and I just work across the account portfolio and doing a bit of scientific communication, research communication, that side of things. A bit more about Taylor and Francis. Those who don't know us, we're one of the world's leading academic publishers, and we currently have over 5 million articles on our main site, TNF Online, and we also assist with other publishing outlets such as Routledge, CRC Press, F1000 and Dove Press.
That's fantastic. Oh, thank you for being here, even though you've recently had dental work. I think that dedication is amazing. So, in this discussion, we are digging into something real, something that goes beyond our degrees, our fields, our titles, how many papers we've published, and whether or not we like reviewer 2. But before we get started, I'm going to tell you about the last time I felt imposter syndrome, and that was this morning. As I did some more preparation for this space, and I sat here looking at my notes, and I thought, who am I to give guidance on imposter syndrome? And then I realised that whether it be a webinar on publishing your own paper, whether it be on making the most of academic conferences, or talking about imposter syndrome and procrastination, that voice of doubt, of not having the right expertise, of feeling like you just don't know enough is always there. So that's my most recent experience. In true icebreaker fashion, Zoe, I wonder if you might also share with us the last time that you felt imposter syndrome.
I would say I feel something close to imposter syndrome every day. Coming from an academic background now, working in the publishing industry, I feel a bit kind of out of place sometimes, or that I wasn't really trained to be doing what I'm doing, but I still really enjoy it. I'm pretty sure I'm good at it. I have felt it more so at times, specifically around work when I've been doing like internal presentations or something like that, when it's been quite an important thing that I've been sharing with a wider audience, and I've not even like recognized some of the things that I've been saying. I've been kind of not running by the seat of my pants, but just sharing things that I've recently learned or sharing things that I'm kind of gaining confidence in myself, and then that can really trigger these feelings of like the imposter syndrome, as we say.
I think imposter syndrome is very, very high among researchers. In fact, in preparation for this space, we did run a poll with a simple question: have you ever felt imposter syndrome? And 1,109 people responded to our poll, with over 91% saying yes. And in response to our call for insight on X, Dr. Kwabena at Kwabena OA reminds us that we should first accept that because imposter syndrome is so common, there's a name for it. But what can we learn from this commonly shared experience? And why do so many of us feel so inadequate despite having achieved so much already? So, Zoe, I would love to hear your take on this. What are some common triggers or factors that contribute to imposter syndrome?
I think to kind of talk about imposter syndrome, it's important to kind of outline a bit about what it is. And it's important to remember that although we say imposter syndrome, it isn't like a diagnosable thing. It's not a real syndrome. It's not something that is in the DSM or anything like that. But in kind of navigating these feelings of feeling like you're somewhere you don't belong, or that you're kind of anxious that you're going to be discovered for not having the skills or ability that would allow you to perform well in the position that you're holding. Some kind of tips for navigating those, or sorry, the common triggers around that and tips for navigating those. Triggers can be anything from extra responsibility, underestimation of your own skill, not receiving kind of praise or acknowledgement in yourself. If you have trouble around your self-esteem or self-image, that's definitely going to exacerbate any kind of feelings of imposter syndrome. A lot of times in academia, you're surrounded by people you look up to, be that professors, principal investigators, or even people who have just published research that you've referenced and have found really insightful. And when you're kind of at a conference with them, or even just in lectures, or you're going to ask questions to them, you can feel nervous, feel scared about where you fit into this, and kind of worried about if you're almost good enough to do that. And I think that's where the kind of imposter syndrome lies, or generally lies for me. Factors that can really contribute towards it as well. Things like rejection and judgment, which are things that we face naturally through the peer review process. And as well, we tend to have a skewed perspective of other people's experiences. We'll only ever see the positive because people will generally only speak about the positive. So if you're looking at a professor at the university you may be attending, and you see all of their positive achievements, you're not going to see how many times they've been knocked back from a journal, or how many instances of rejection or judgment they've faced to get to where they have. You're only seeing the positive, and then that skewed perspective, when you know how many troubles you've faced, makes you sometimes feel either inferior or just kind of builds that anxiety.
That's great. I think in addition to what you've just said there, it's important that we don't get caught up in unhealthy comparisons with our colleagues, because I've said it 100 times on the PhD place, but we're all at different stages of this journey, and someone's always going to be ahead of us and have written more words, even where someone is, at the same time in their PhD. Nobody is researching what we are researching, and our research has its own unique timeline. Something that I would encourage every single person listening to this space to do is to keep a journal. And that's not a research journal or a daily log, but just a scrapbook or a document where you can record anything that you might be proud of. And that can be your degrees, your papers, any awards that you might have been put forward for. But try not to think of just big things. So perhaps you've written a blog, perhaps you've reviewed a paper, perhaps you've received a really great piece of feedback in an email from a supervisor. I have so many printed out emails that made me feel great at the time that you can just return to in those times of imposter syndrome. So if we take some more insight from our community, Hercules at Combrink HMVE says, be proud of your achievements, however small they may seem. Your achievements are a showcase of what others recognise as worthy in this world. If you're like me and you have the memory of a goldfish, then you definitely want to keep that journal and just remember those things like a CV for the soul. And include everything and anything that makes you feel proud of yourself. And that's similar to what at Madianti sent in to us as well, which is when imposter syndrome strikes, you can renew your CV and remember your past accomplishments. In a similar vein, at Lost PhDs says, remember that you are where you are because of your achievements, and that your peers are also struggling too. So talk with each other, be honest, because most things are not easy from that. Most things only look easy from the outside. So let's move on to procrastination tips, because of course research can be a tedious process that requires us to go deep into our specialist areas for prolonged periods of time. So it's No doubt that academics are master procrastinators. And procrastination is the act of delaying or avoiding tasks until a later time, often because you are completing other tasks that you might deem less daunting or more fun. And procrastination is not the same as laziness. When I was doing the research for this webinar, I found lots of comparison with laziness because it's about distraction, whereas laziness is more a general lack of motivation. But they do have similar outcomes. So, of course, if you're constantly putting things off and putting off tasks, then it's important. Then it's possible that those tasks won't get done, and that can lead to missed deadlines and increased stress, where procrastination becomes a real hindrance to our productivity. And procrastination can arise from various factors, but two prominent causes include perfectionism and fear of failure. And additionally, it can be further exacerbated by neurodiversity related challenges, as observed in cases like ADHD. In our recent call for insight, Dr. Charlotte Prue advises researchers to get your ADHD diagnosed, because maybe this whole time it wasn't procrastinating but experiencing executive dysfunction. Now, before I talk through some tips for navigating procrastination, I wanted to ask you, Zoe, what has helped you better manage procrastination in your life?
I have been a serial procrastinator for as long as I can remember. And when I was studying in university, I developed some kind of unusual tips or ways to manage my procrastination habits. When I was trying to study and I was just working through kind of loads and loads of PowerPoints, what I tend to do is I worked out a PowerPoint would take me about half an hour, and then I'd play a computer game for half an hour. And that kind of equivalent exchange of half an hour of work and half an hour of play was the perfect motivator I needed to sit and focus and get through 9 hours worth of PowerPoints and manage to study entire courses in a week because I had that kind of consistent reward strategy in place. A few other things that have helped me kind of since then in the kind of more professional or academic world. Sometimes it's helpful to set my own deadlines. So maybe a few days or a couple of weeks in advance of the actual deadline, I'll set a personal deadline to have it done by. Now, that only works if you can hold yourself accountable. But it does work sometimes. As well, something I'll tend to do is I'll divert tasks. So if I see something I'm kind of noticing I'm procrastinating it because starting it seeming too daunting, I'll go and start something I really, really don't want to do. And to procrastinate the thing I really, really don't want to do, I'll start the thing that seems too daunting. So it's almost like using procrastination as a tool to fix procrastination.
Definitely. So that sounds like positive procrastination. Could you maybe walk us through more what positive procrastination means?
Yeah, I only learned about this term recently. Actually, I wasn't really aware of the different types of procrastination. Kind of if you're researching this online, you might run into some things saying about negative procrastination being linked to laziness, and I don't think that's fair to say at all. Generally, negative procrastination, when I understand it, is kind of delaying things indefinitely or just saying, "Oh, I'll do this when I can be bothered." Positive procrastination is more of that allocating time in the future to do the thing. So if you have a piece of writing you're wanting to do or a poster you want to create, when it's going to get kind of closer to the deadline for that, you put the time aside in your calendar, you block it out, and then you can do more urgent tasks in the meantime. Something that can help you kind of prioritize or work out urgency in these tasks is an Eisenhower matrix, which is a freely available resource. It's sometimes just called a task matrix. But these are just four little grid squares, and you can arrange tasks by urgency and importance, I think it is. And this can help you gain clarity on where your tasks lie and how quickly they need done. So then you can organize your tasks strategically in your calendar, and that's kind of delaying things that won't need done immediately. So that would be a more positive procrastination method.
That's fantastic. So, procrastination, then, we often talk about it in negative terms, but like resting, is important and it's necessary. And procrastination can indicate that perhaps you just need to take a rest from your main task, or perhaps you work best by switching tasks regularly. Master Academia, which is an awesome website with lots of advice for PhD researchers, reassures us that sometimes your brain just needs a break. And there are times when you have to just give in to procrastination. Take a few hours off from your thesis, start planning, write to do lists, print out an agenda, mark meetings, mini deadlines, goals, and just schedule your days. So, if we share some more insight on how our community navigates procrastination, Oliver at OLED underscore crafts, says to tackle procrastination, focus on moving the checklist forward, improving the product until we deliver small baby steps and have fun. And Ida Wilson at IW underscore consulting says that we should not be calling it procrastination, but rather a well-deserved break time for oversaturated mind to synthesize complexity, which Ida also calls incubation time. My own advice for the mindset that leads to procrastination would be that you have 3 years, you have 5 years, you have 6 years, however long you have in which to write your thesis, and in that time you will finish your thesis, but you might not finish the conversation of your project, and that's okay. You often hear and see on X that a finished thesis is a perfect thesis, and that's really important. So instead of some quick fire questions today, Zoe, I have a challenge for you, a procrastination challenge. So I'm going to present you with some possible tips, and I want you to decide if they're beneficial or if they're bad tips. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Okie dokie. So the first one is stress is the best motivator.
Now, I am incredibly guilty of using that a lot, especially when I was more in academia, but in kind of the professional setting too. I use that all the time. I wouldn't say it's been particularly beneficial for my mental health, and I would actually say, although it is productive and it makes sure I get the work done, it is leaning towards a bad tip, because risking mental health can make the procrastination worse, or it'll just make the quality of your work suffer. So it's not worth compromising on giving yourself the best shot at what you want to do, to just use the stress to make sure that it's done in the first place.
That's great. Right, the second tip, you should say yes to every new opportunity.
I wouldn't consider that a tip at all, really. I think that's very. I don't think that's good advice. Saying no is a skill. Saying no is a very important skill, and learning when to say no and how to manage your workload is so important in every walk of life, be that academia, professional settings, home life. Learning how to set boundaries and say no to taking stuff on that is going to overcommit yourself and add more stress to your plate is so important. So definitely my tip on the back of that would be learn how to say no.
Absolutely. As someone who's having a very, very busy August, I can relate. I can relate to your advice there very much. Right, the last tip. You should embrace procrastination.
Oh, definitely. So one of the things I do is use procrastination against itself. I think this is quite a positive thing if you're able to. I was like you can't see me, but I'm doing inverted commas, hack your procrastination and use it against itself in moderation. It can have some benefits. It can provide you with that rest. It can, as we've said before, give you that break away from whatever you're focusing on, take you away from your thesis or your piece of work, and that rest can give you an entirely new perspective and help you achieve the best results. Because sometimes when you're just sitting and you're focusing and you've got your blinkers on, you're not going to be having kind of open-minded thoughts or things like that. So having that active rest period can, and embracing that procrastination can ensure that your best work is going to be done, as long as it's done in moderation.
That's great, thank you. So before we wrap up today's space, we wanted to open the floor to our listeners. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask or thoughts that you'd like to share with us, you can raise your hand and we can invite you to chat. Please be aware that these spaces are recorded on X and will be available after the space ends. But if anyone would like to ask a question, you're very welcome to request now. We have one request, but it was from the beginning. So if you want to just send us a hands up, and then we can invite you to the space.
It's a shame we don't have the hold music for this part. If you're not comfortable requesting to speak as well, drop us a little comment or reply underneath and we can answer the question there. I think we have just had a request to speak though, so I'll go ahead and let you on. Loretta, that should be you now available to speak. So once you've connected, feel free to ask away.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Hi there.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All
Okay.
right, that's fine. So I struggled with imposter syndrome beginning of my semester. By the way, I'm studying for my LLM. So that's masters in law. So I struggled with my imposter syndrome first semester. In class I would have very good points to make and contributions to make, but I'll be scared if I make those contributions. Will people laugh at me? Will I make any sense? Will it be the right answer? And then someone will say something along those lines, but maybe not in the way I would have done. So towards the end of the semester, I discovered that I was living in fear, and I felt like I wasn't maybe good enough, and maybe people in class were doing better than I was, until I saw my results. And that gave me, the confidence to speak up in class more often. And it kind of helped me because I had to go back and look inwards, find the strength, and also talk to myself. So I had these words of affirmations written on a wall somewhere. I'll wake up in the morning and go stand in front of the mirror and just say, I am capable, I will do this, just say those words of affirmation. And it kind of helped me. So I'm just going to say, anyone going through that, you can always find a way to, figure it out. Like it did help me. You can start with words of affirmation to just bring out those things out of your head, because if you don't do it, it's not going to go away. And then for procrastination, sometimes it's not really laziness. You know exactly what to do, but you are waiting for the deadline, especially people who work very well under pressure. They always wait for the last minute to just rush and do what they have to do. I had to find a proper way for time management as well. I'll set alarms, intervals. Just say, okay, I'm going to do this for an hour. After an hour, I'll take a break, because in the end, you don't want to break down and not do anything. So I can even imagine what PhD students are going through, because when I talk to them, Some will tell you, oh, this is my second year and I'm almost giving up. I'm tired. I mean, I need to take a break and come back after a year or two. So it's good to have support systems, people who will encourage you. And immediately I saw this topic, I said, no, this is going to be an opportunity for me to also listen and learn from other people as well. So I just thought to share my experience with you people. Thank you so much.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us. Yes, positive self-talk, challenging negative self-talk by countering it with positive statements. You know, whether that be like you said, talking to yourself in the mirror, whether that be writing down your achievements in a journal. Remind yourself of your past successes and your strength, and really celebrate the small wins of, you know, putting your hand up and asking a question in class. That's amazing, and that's a really good way to gradually build up your confidence. But yeah, thank you for sharing.
So often in life we are our own worst critics, and we have such a skewed perspective of our own achievements as compared to other people's. And it's really heartwarming to hear how you've overcome that kind of skewed experience and used your affirmations and everything to increase your confidence. But that's something that I've done as well, and I think it is something that more people could do to try and kind of soothe these feelings of imposter syndrome. And the time management around procrastination is so important as well. That's coming into that positive procrastination aspect of things. So thank you for sharing.
Fantastic. No. Okay. Right. If you do find yourself with lingering questions or insights, whether you're listening to this recording or revisiting the discussions that we've had over the past few weeks, then please do feel free to share your insights with us by tagging at the PhD Place and at TNF Online. So as we bring our collaboration to a close, I want to say an enormous thank you to Zoe and Taylor and Francis for the insightful discussions we've shared over the past few weeks. I have definitely learned so much from speaking with you. And also thank you to everyone who sent in your questions and your insight and your engagement and support throughout our spaces. And yeah, we really do want to just wish you all continued growth and learning on your academic and personal journeys too.
Thank you so much, Nathan. It's been so fun hosting these spaces with you and working with yourselves in everything we've talked about. It's been really fun speaking to the community and everything as well. If you have any questions for Taylor and Francis or anything about SciComm or anything for myself, don't be afraid to reach out. We're here. We're here to listen. We're here to engage, and we're here to talk to you at the end of the day. So please do let us know. Don't be a stranger. And yeah, hopefully speak again soon.
If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more academia related content, then please subscribe to the PhD Place YouTube channel.